have no facilities, so we have to put everyone on drugs.
Can you answer a question? Why you got sick people coming back and forth, going to Bronx State, and they're walking around like zombies because they're full of dope? And I'm talking about medicine, if you don't know. Now you tell me, why is it like that?
It's more than bad facilities. We're talking about a whole system that conspires to keep people sick.
You have to make a differentiation between the open and direct violence that very often is attributed to revolutionaries, and the type of violence that happens every day on a regular basis among poor people. Whether it's the violence of having to go all winter in an apartment that has no heat, or whether it's the violence of having to go to a hospital that doesn't give you service and you end up dying anyway. You don't die with a bullet necessarily, but you die in other ways. And that type of violence takes a lot more lives.
The meat rack. She stood out with her dyed black pixie hairdo, candle white skin so gaunt, her eyes looked like golf balls. Whenever I got off the subway at 125th and Lex, my home stop, she'd be there, a regular among the prostitutes. I had the typical male junkie reaction to female addicts. They disgusted me. As I'd exit the station, I'd keep my head down, making a dash past the meat rack. In spite of my disguise, Kangol cap, oval shades, mustache, and chin beard, the hookers had that extra sense, knew I was an outsider, un blanquito. Would come on to me like I was a trick. Mira chico, la salsa caliente. Yo baby, let mama cool ya. After I entered Logos, I was joined several weeks later by the Pixie Cup from 125th Street. I watched her do a makeover, new hairdo, new teeth, a young boyfriend. But at the end of the program, she got pregnant, and deciding she couldn't handle a kid, went to Lincoln Hospital, known as the butcher shop by locals, to have an abortion. And after being given an anesthesia, contradicted by her asthma, died on the operating table. At Ortiz's funeral home on East 103rd Street, by the black wall of the Park Avenue L, I waited until everyone in our program paid their respects, then joined the whores in saying goodbye. Back in the South Bronx, shades drawn tight, shadows like boa constrictors, someone said, "Shit, we're all on borrowed time." Still, I saw traces of light, left by the pixie cut meat racker.
We make no distinction between the jails and our streets. Our people are killed in the streets all the time. A brother by the name of Johnny is killed in the Bronx by the police. A sister by the name of Carmen Rodriguez to Lincoln Hospital by an abortion. We say that it's all the same thing, that it's genocide against third world people, black and Puerto Rican people, and that's why we're charging the city with murder.
Julio, break down, Julio, slow down, los boricuas se vengarán. Despierta, boricua, defiende lo tuyo. Despierta, boricua, defiende lo tuyo.
We are subversive to the United States government as a political party. We believe that socialism is the only political system under which poor people, working people can expect a decent life. And we've come to realize that the only way that we can survive as a people is through a socialist society. See, we don't just talk about revolution, we talk about the material reality that people face every day. And the material reality that people face every day is more and more convincing them that things have to change.
We sat down, we talked about different concepts of hospital administration, the idea of involving patients and workers at the same time in the running of the hospital. And they give lip service to us. They say, yes, we understand these are things that are needed for the community, but we can't do anything about it.
Last July 14th, the Young Lords Party, the Think Lincoln Committee, and the Health Revolutionary Unity Movement began an occupation of part of the Lincoln Hospital complex. Among the 7 demands they presented to the hospital administration were the establishment of a permanent complaint table and a permanent daycare center, immediate construction of the new Lincoln Hospital, a program of door-to-door preventive medicine, and finally, the establishment of a drug detoxification program.
I actually was representing the Black Panther Party at that time inside of Atrium. And I used to wear hot pants. I don't know if you know about hot pants, but I was the queen of hot pants. And my hot pants were hot. So I'm out selling my newspapers in the hot pants.
I used to travel throughout the South Bronx, wherever the best drugs were, that's where you went to cop. And in one of those runs, I met Cleo Silvers.
And the little one used to be, hey, baby, you so fine. Mama, why don't you come over here and talk to me? And I would be like, kid, don't bother me. I'm selling my newspapers. You're interrupting me. Don't bother me.
And then every time I traveled down that neighborhood, I always stop, talk to her. And one day, I got the kid by himself. She taps me and says, look over there. And when I look, cops are selling drugs out of a patrol car, handing drugs over.
Out of the car to the dealers.
And she says, you hate cops. Look at them. That's who you're giving your money to.
You're really messing up because you are right in there doing exactly what the system wants you to do.
You gotta get off this. And that's something that I never forgot.
He said, okay, I want to be a revolutionary now.
Because she understood that nobody could tell you to get off of dope. But when you are ready to stop, call me. And I had her home number.
shooting dope with Trotsky. I score some hefty bags of skag from Old Man Cano on East 118th Street. The viejito, 40-plus years in the dope game, who once OD'd on Christmas Eve and leaned into a radiator, leaving a brown scar down the middle of his head. I rush to the East Village and buy a mess of Trotskyite newspapers, Vanguard, Fighting Worker, Theory and Practice, march into an NYU bathroom, lock myself up in a vast marble stall, and pump Cano's sax into my arm. After reading competing accounts of the 1921 Kronstadt Rebellion, the Minneapolis Teamster Strike of 1934, I nod off to the lullaby of the ABC of materialist dialectics, the negation of the negation of the negation.
It is obvious that our people of El Barrio do not bring in the reported 300 tons of illegal drugs that entered America last year. The man himself is directly responsible for keeping us high. We're bringing our people down from that high, righteously down on the man's neck. A new man and new woman are emerging, and their child is revolution.
Right on.
That day, November 10th of 1970, the hospital was taken over for the second time. It was a coincidence. The last day I shoot drugs is the night before, and the first day of Lincoln Detox is the first day that I'm getting off of dope.
People were getting signs together, you know, and I remember the time they asked me, we need a sign so we can go around the neighborhood to let the people know that there's this program here. So I went upstairs, I got some bed sheets from the wards, and I brought it down, we spread it out on the floor, and where Lincoln Detox is open. And so we would take these bread sheets, and then we would you take one side, I'll take the other, and it was almost like marching down the streets of Brook Avenue, Cypress Avenue, and we went into abandoned buildings, we went into shooting galleries.
In November of 1970, the revolutionary people moved into the hospital. They took over for the benefit of the people. program was developed through the coalition of the Young Lords Party, Black Panther Party, and ATRIM, which is the Health Revolutionary Unity Movement.
Word came down from the man. Cool it.
The people jail the rich, free the poor.
Don't run. Be cool. Be cool. Don't run.
You know, people said, yo, they took over the hospital, they established a detox program. By the second day, we had hundreds of people lined up trying to get detox. As this is all taking place, I am withdrawing from heroin. Cleo saw my struggle. You know, I could just walk away and maybe get high one more time. That's a head game that you go through when you're withdrawing. So she took me home with her. She said, no, you're not going. Where do you think you're going? So she took me home to her house with her husband.
And mostly, I held Panama in my arms.
I was in nursing school. I only had one more year to go, so I volunteered for the summer. The next day, I walked right into the program. So it was a big auditorium. On the stage, they had the medical personnel, the nurses, taking blood, doing medical histories. But in the main room, they had circles of chairs, that this is where they would give their therapy. But I didn't realize that the therapy was political education.
When we talk about dope, and we talk about that the Black and Puerto Rican people are the people who are suffering from this dope, we realize where it comes from unconsciously. That's why we're having PE classes here in Lincoln Hospital. Because once you realize where the source of the dope is coming from and what is the purpose of the dope being perpetrated in the Black and Puerto Rican community, you'll be able to deal with it without any methadone. When you realize that dope is a genocide plot by the American government on the third world people, you see, then you begin to realize as a third world person, you have to stop drugs in order to save your children, your children's children, and your mamas.
The influx of drugs that comes from the very same system that has exploited the people, we feel that in order to give them the proper type of views and how to deal with addiction is to become politicized, become oriented toward a revolutionary approach.
The auditorium actually became a liberated territory. The police could not come into the auditorium unless we gave them permission.
Not even the hospital police were allowed. Lincoln Detox, the auditorium, you know, and our office space were sacred, and the cops in the hospital knew that they couldn't come close or they were going to war, that we were prepared to fight for that space. The cops didn't dare come into the nurses' residence building. You know, we provided not just the mechanical detoxing, but we provided a place for them to sit, a place for them to be heard, a place for them to air what they were feeling as they were detoxing.
We spoke about imperialism and the wars of imperialism and how drugs were used to hold the people down, to hold the masses down, to control the populations. And we read books like The Opium Wars. For those who couldn't read, we would read to them. We would read the Little Red Book, Mao Zedong's book, you know, Frantz Fanon. Now we're kicking it. Now we're in the streets, we're demonstrating, building defense committees for political prisoners. We had rent strikes. We would go house to house. And one thing led to the other, and before I knew it, we were looking for an alternative to methadone. Methadone was a synthetic opiate. And although we were anti-methadone maintenance, because methadone maintenance prior to the detox program would keep you on methadone for the rest of your life.
When the terminology methadone maintenance is used, what they're saying is that they put you on this drug and they maintain you on this drug, which means is that they hold you. They hold you in check. They put you in slavery. They put you in physical slavery and they put you in mental slavery. The only difference is, brother, the only difference is that the people out on the streets do it what they call illegally. And because methadone is stamped by the United States government and they say it's legal, it makes people think that methadone is all right. But it's just dying, just like you're dying off of heroin, you're dying off of methadone. You see what I mean? Only thing is that they're authorizing your death. They're saying, now we're gonna let you die legally.
In the federal facility, they had a methadone maintenance program. And people were coming out of jail addicted to 500-600 milligrams of methadone a day and hitting the street and trying to compensate for that addiction with shooting a lot of heroin. It was an epidemic. In the Young Lords, our politics were very much pro the Chinese Revolution. And we began doing readings about what was taking place in China, China being a place that had been heavily affected by opium addiction.
One day, I know it was Matulu, came to one of our meetings, and I always thought of the New York Times article, but there was an article about an acupuncturist in Bangkok, Thailand, who was treating one of his clients. After he finished the sessions with the client confessed to him and said, you know, I've been smoking opium since I was a teenager. And he said, since I started the acupuncture treatments, I no longer have desire to smoke opium. So Mutu and I said, hey, what do you think? Why don't we try it? So, no problem. We wound up going to Chinatown, buying a couple of boxes of acupuncture needles. We started practicing on oranges. And before you knew it, we were treating each other. And before we knew it, we were doing auricular therapy.
I was a nurse. I wasn't that interested in sticking people and doing acupuncture because my thing was if I give you a needle, you need to have something in it because then I know something's going to happen. But I had to watch this for years.
And we started detoxing people left and right with acupuncture, and people just didn't believe it. And I used to tell people, look, you're naturally going to get high. And they couldn't understand how that was possible. And I had to explain to them, your body has all the chemicals it needs. And then people would think that we had medicine inside the needle. And I remember several times I had to break the needle to show them that there was no medicine because they felt so relaxed, so naturally high.
3 days later, I had an entirely different person. Crazy as it may seem, this actually works. That's what bothers the powers that be, because it's so simple it's stupid. It works.
It's
you know
what, 2 cents a needle?
So to the doctors, who were Western-trained doctors, acupuncture was kind of scary. They didn't know what it was. So, of course, the radicals, the white radicals in the doctors' collective, were the only ones that were willing to see what it's like. Let's try it. Even Richard Taft, in the beginning, was scared. But he took it on. He was willing to say, I'll represent, you guys need a medical doctor. I'm down with it. So he was down with it, and we became friends.
we were becoming more and more prominent in drug treatment. People from around the world began to hear about the Lincoln Detox Operation. And even the United Nations gave us a recognition for the great work we were doing around addiction.
We always knew that there were provocateurs and agents that had infiltrated the organization. The FBI had come by and terrorized everybody. They were looking for Matulu. They were looking for the weather on the ground. You know, there were bombings. You know, the war kept going. The country still kept blowing up. But the FBI would come around and investigate and intimidate people.
There was political wrangling going on in the drug detoxification program between the Republic of New Africa, the Black Panther Party, the Young Lords, and the doctors, and the Mike Smiths. Without a unity, without a set of principles, there was an ability for a group like the Lyndon LaRouche bunch to come in and wreak havoc.
The attacks on the program also came from what was supposed to be this radical organization called the National Labor Caucus Committee. They publicly stated they were going to come to shut the Lincoln Detox down.
When they showed up and they had guns and they got into the program and there was a shootout and a couple of them got shot and a couple of our people went to jail.
So yeah, we had enemies. They began attacking Richard Taft.
The whole idea was to criminalize the program, to demonize it, and to, I guess, to stop Richard, because he probably could have elevated the program.
He was the great-great-grandson of President Taft.
Somewhere in this process, one morning we walk into Lincoln Hospital and we find Richard Taft dead in a closet in the back of the auditorium. Dead with a needle in his arm. Dead from a heroin overdose. We knew that he didn't kill himself. We knew that he didn't shoot drugs.
I know that after his death, when they did the autopsy, they didn't find any heroin in his urine. So that meant that it was just one shot that he took or someone gave him that OD'd him. That day, the federal government was coming to visit the detox program, the People's Program, because we had asked for some federal funds. And they were coming over to look at the program, look at the record. And it's just a coincidence that the day that they show up, we find him dead. He was wearing a Malcolm X t-shirt. He was a revolutionary.
At the same time, there was growing concern from the traditional medical community about acupuncture and them wanting to control it. So they began to put the stumbling blocks. Medical doctors began to be certified to supervise acupuncturists by going on these like weekend conferences on acupuncture.
Acupuncture helps by touch. Most animals don't have fingers, so it helps by nearness and being close, sleeping together and all that.
Lincoln Hospital didn't recognize us as part of their team because we were dealing with drug addicts and people that had problems with alcohol. So it was almost like they didn't want any part of us. So of course that's when they had moved us to this other building that we were able to...
Moved us?
Well, we actually... There was a transformation that occurred at that time where we had to leave.
So what they actually did was they invited us down to the Health and Hospital Corporation for an emergency meeting, you know, and then Koch showed up with his police force, padlocked the clinic, and didn't let anybody in or out.
When we arrived, Lincoln Hospital was surrounded by New York City police. They had a list of staff people from Lincoln Detox that were barred from entering the facility.
They closed the doors, and we didn't have anywhere else to go.
And that was the beginning of the end. After that, they transferred us out, you know, cementing our maintenance programs. So I remember we couldn't do acupuncture. We couldn't organize. We were being sent to a sterilized clinic that only believed in keeping people on methadone forever and ever. So I quit. And we also have to understand that we worked as a collective. It was a group of us. A lot of people needed that support, which we gave them. And a lot of marriages collapsed. A lot of people went back on drugs. You know? So that was the end of the Lincoln Detox People's Program. From that point on, it changed. There was no politics. It was no longer called the People's Program.
Organizations to come and have space here to run arts programs, music, alternatives to incarceration, youth leadership programs, entrepreneurship.
It was profit making. We made lots of money. Everybody who touched the thing made money. So that meant there was a lot of motivation, because ordinarily a ghetto hospital, you just make money and shut up. We were, for several reasons, such an inception. The world is messed up. We haven't messed up.
Whatever exists now, without the political part, is only a sector, a section of the real struggle and of the real program to rehabilitate people.
Now it's become popular to talk about alternative medicine and herbs and meditation and yoga and Tai Chi. But back then, the People's Republic was an example of a revolution. The Cubans was an example of a revolution. There were people who were saying socialism is possible. And in those countries, they have socialized medicine. And in China, they're using acupuncture. The whole thing of holistic lifestyle or holistic medicine is that we have to take all of it together. We have to take the whole earth and make it work. Now, whether you do Tai Chi, Kung Fu, yoga, meditation, the idea is to move. The idea is to move the Qi, to get the energy moving, to get the Qi flow, Qi flow. You know, every culture has a different name for it. But the idea is to make movement. And once you make movement, that energy moves, that energy will not get stale. The minute that the stream gets blocked, then disease becomes an issue.